The Chinese premier has hit back at attempts to force China to revalue the yuan, saying it would be a disaster for the world. China is digging in against concerted efforts from Europe and the US to remove the peg that keeps its currency down and keeps Chinese exports cheap. Andrew Robertson reports.
As one leading food exporter lamented to the ABC, we're being smashed by the high Australian dollar. The bad news is the dollar is likely to stay high for some time to come.
The last time Australian dollar was this high against the US, interest rate differentials were a bit less and commodity prices were a bit higher. And so what's also driving this is the fact the US dollar now is so weak.
A weakness that is being deliberately exacerbated by a US government hoping to spark an export-led recovery through the Federal Reserve undertaking what's been called quantitative easing, or in other words, printing more money. But while the United States is happy to manipulate its own currency, it continues to rail against China doing the same thing with the renminbi.
We believe it's very important to see more progress by the major emerging economies to more flexible, market-oriented exchange rate systems. This is particularly important for those countries whose currencies are significantly undervalued.
It's a theme which has been echoed on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, where the European Union, like the Obama administration, wants China to allow its currency to appreciate.
China's real effective exchange rate remains undervalued and is thus contributing to misaligned global exchange rate configurations.
Letting the adjustment fall only on the euro could be damaging for the euro area recovery. I'm sure a stronger European economy is in China's interest, since the European Union is China's biggest export market.
European political leaders were speaking at a summit in Brussels, which was attended by Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao. While the Premier reaffirmed that China will allow a small rise in the renminbi, he warned of dire consequences if the Chinese currency jumps too far too quickly.
Without this stability of the RMB exchange rate, there would be no stability for businesses, for employment, for our people. And also, if China has social and economic problems, it would be a disaster for the world.
In other words, China will not bow to the demands of the West, but will do what it thinks is in its best interests. Many other countries are also forcing down the value of their currencies in a bid to stay competitive, which has prompted Brazil's finance minister to declare there's a currency war. It's not good for the global economy, though, which is why currency will be near the top of the agenda when the International Monetary Fund meets in Washington this weekend.
The issue of exchange rate adjustments is becoming a more and more important one. We're just starting to see the forces which force these adjustments and the reactions of countries.
Until countries decide not to react, Australian exporters will have to live with a dollar that's higher than it probably should be.